Within a matter of minutes, Robert, Riley, and Cindy made their way to a side of Woodcrest Forest, where there was a large flower bed. Robert was still carrying sleeping Huey in his arms, whereas Riley and Cindy were on foot. Cindy said, "So, this is the flower bed you were talking about?" "Great," Riley said, wiping the sweat from his forehead with his arm. "Now, Granddad, what kind of flowers do we need again?" "We need posies," Robert answered. "What kind of posies?" Cindy asked. "Don't you remember the old nursery rhyme, ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posies?" Robert asked. "Back in the 17th century, there was a deadly disease going around in Europe called the plague. The way you know it if you caught it the plague, if it was you had a rosy red ring around a part of your body. People had different flowers and herbs into their pockets, aka posies, to ward it off." As Robert was explaining the nursery rhyme origin, Huey started to snore loudly again. This caused both Riley and Cindy to cover their ears. "What?" Robert asked. "What's the matter? You don't like the story?" "It's not that. We don't like that story, Mr. Freeman," Cindy explained. "But Huey's snoring really loudly again," Riley added. Robert looked down at Huey, snoring in his arms. "I guess the reason why he's snoring is because your story's boring," Riley laughed. "You know, Riley," Robert snarled, "you are so lucky that I got your brother in your arms. Otherwise I would have taken out my belt and give you a whooping right about now." Both of the kids cringed and backed away a bit. "Dang, your granddad is savage," Cindy whispered. "Yeah, I know," Riley said. "You wouldn't like it when he gets too angry." "Anyway, we got no time to waste," Robert stated. "Riley, go find some purple herbs for your brother. Cindy, go find some daffodils and daisies. I'll watch over Huey." Both Riley and Cindy nodded, then ran into the flower bed to gather up some herbs and flowers. As they gathered the herbs, daffodils, and daisies for Huey, Cindy was wondering why he was snoring in his sleep. "Hey Riley," Cindy asked, "how come your brother's snoring?" "He's got a piece of apple stuck in his throat, making it impossible for Huey to breathe normally," Riley said. "I don't know how long I could take his snoring. If he snores again tonight, I'm gonna need to retreat to the living room." Cindy rolled her eyes. "But we're gathering these herbs and flowers so his snoring could be a little quieter," she stated. "Yeah," Riley said, "but I'm not sure if that's gonna be working or not." "Why not?" Cindy asked. "Because sometimes Granddad can be full of it," Riley answered. "Riley, don't you just think I'm over here because I can't hear you?" Robert called. Without saying another word, the kids got back to finding herbs, daffodils, and daisies. Within a matter of seconds, Robert's cell phone began to ring. He crouched down to his knees and set the sleeping Huey on the ground to answer the call. He took his cell phone out of his pocket and answered it. "Hello?" Robert replied. On the other line, it was Tom Dubois. He and his wife just got done making the bed, just made out of flowers. "Robert, everything is all ready to go," Tom said. "We just need to line up the chairs. Other than that, we're good. So start heading back over here right away." "Alright, we'll be on our way," Robert said. By the time Robert hung up the call, Riley and Cindy came back with a handful of purple herbs, daffodils, and daisies. Riley said, "Okay, Granddad, we got the herbs and some daffodils and daisies." "Perfect," Robert said. Mr. Du Bois just called for me, telling me everything is set and ready." He picked up Huey up from the ground. "Come on, let's get moving." And with that being said, they all ran their way back to the middle of the forest. During their way here, Robert, Riley, and Cindy were being ambushed by dark monsters. "Oh my God!" Riley shouted. "Who the hell are they?" "Those dark creatures," Robert answered. "What did they want from us?" Cindy asked. "It seems like they're after Huey," Robert said. "What do you mean, Granddad?" Riley asked. "Because Huey's asleep, He is a target to Stinkmeaner's minions, Robert stated, all while looking down at Huey. Speaking of Huey, at this time he started to snore loud quietly because the herbs and flowers were being near him. If they catch him, they might possess him, Robert said. Don't worry, Mr. Freeman, Sydney said. Riley and I will take them down while you get Huey to the center of the forest. We'll meet you there, Riley said. Robert nodded his head. Okay, he said. Both of you be careful, though. We will, Riley and Cindy said in illusion. They charged ahead to take down the dark monsters. Robert ran all the way to the forest center to meet the trees and the rest while carrying the sleeping grandson. He looked down at Huey and told him, Hang in there, Huey. You're going to be all right in a minute. Meanwhile, Jasmine was running to the hideout. But when she got there, she saw more and more dark creatures. In fact, the same creatures that ambushed her before. Instead of cowering in fear, she took out the katana and attacked them. After a matter of minutes, they disappeared into thin air. Can't scare me, monsters, Jasmine said, before entering the hideout. When she kicked the doors open, Jasmine saw Stinkmeaner with his back to her. Stinkmeaner, she said, hearing his name being called. She turned around to look at her. Why, Jasmine Du Bois, Stinkmeaner said. How delightful to see you. For the last time? In an instant, the doors slammed shut behind Jasmine. She gasped as she tried to open them. However, they were locked tight. Because of this, she wasn't able to open them. You've got nowhere to run, Du Bois, Stinkmeaner chuckled, and you've got nowhere to hide. We must settle this once and for all. Jasmine became scared at the sight of Stinkmeaner's spirit. At the same time, the Du Bois couple, Ed Wonclear, 1, Uncle Ruckus, Ed Woncleaner 2, Free, and Jan Rummy just got everything ready. The homemade flower bed was made for Huey to lie on with the chairs lined up in a row. Man, what's taking the guy so long? Ed groaned in boredom. How should I know? Rummy said, shrugging his shoulders and looking at the phone. How should I know? Want to know something? Uncle Ruckus began. One time, I got so bored, people started getting prepared for the party that I just decided to throw some rocks. Rummy and Ed were quite surprised by that story. No way, Rummy said. You were a deviant like us? Ed asked. Well, I wouldn't really call myself a deviant. The determinant, or whatever you call it, Uncle Ruckus said. I was just a kid who wanted to live and have some fun. A little bit of trouble. Ed Woncleaner 1 looked back and straight up. Everyone look, it's Robert, he announced. Everyone looked at Ed's direction and saw Robert running through the crowd, all the while carrying sleeping Huey. Tom and Sarah Du Bois stood up, and the elder stopped running to catch his breath. Robert, Tom said. You just made it just in time. Sorry it took so long, Toe, Robert said, gasping for a break. We got a little sidetracked. Where is Riley and Cindy? Sarah asked. We are here, Riley called, as he and Cindy met up with the others while carrying the herbs and flowers. You kids okay? Robert asked. Yeah, Cindy said. We took out of all of the demons, and we still got these, Riley said, while holding the herbs and flowers. They were all perfectly fine without any petals falling or scratched. That's wonderful, Sarah said. The bed is all ready for Huey. Robert then walked over the flower bed with Huey and Cindy, with Riley and Cindy following him. Once he made it, he set the sleeping Huey down where he could get comfortable. In addition, he folded his grandson's hands. Hey, Granddad, Riley asked. Why is you gotta fold Huey's hands that way? Well, that way he could hold the posy, Robert answered. All right, kids, you know what to do. What are we supposed to do? Riley asked. Duct tape Huey's mouth? Yo, boy, you better watch your mouth, Robert warned. All right, Riley said. We know what to do. We give Huey the posy. Okay, now give him the posy, Robert said. As he was walking over to his chair in the front row, the kids walked up to the flower bed and took a look at Huey, who at this time was snoring quietly. One more time before sleeping silently. You think Huey will be snoring forever and ever? Cindy asked. He better not, Riley said, all the while putting his herbs into Huey's hands. 'Cause if he continues to do so, I'll have to retreat to the living room every night. I hope you won't have to do that, Cindy said, giving the daffodils and daisies to the sleeping kid. Besides, that apple chunk can't stay in his throat forever. Riley gave his crush a little smile. You might be right on this one, he said. Cindy looked at her crush, smiling. Then she gave him a smile too. They had placed every single one of the herbs and flowers into Huey's hands. By this time, Huey stopped snoring and started to breathe normally again. Phew, Riley said, wiping the sweat off of his shoulder. I thought it would never end. He and Cindy sat down next to Robert. Back at the hideout, Jasmine was feeling worried about what Stinkmeaner was going to do to her. However, the old evil spirit began to make fun of the girl. What's the matter? Stinkmeaner taunted. Can't you fight? Oh wait, you can't fight, because you're a girl. You're a little girl, a little harmless girl. He then laughed in delight. Jasmine became more and more angry by his remarks. It's one thing to call me a little girl, she began. She took out her katana and pointed at Stinkmeaner. Jasmine continued. But when you call me a little harmless girl, that's where I draw the line. She ran towards Stinkmeaner. However, he took out his cane and blocked the katana. In that case, bring it on, little harmless girl, he said. She became furious and knocked over the evil spirit off of his feet. And after that, pointed the katana at him. I dare you to say it again, she threatened. Little harmless girl, Stinkmeaner said. Why you? Jasmine shouted, tried to stab Stinkmeaner's spirit in the heart. Unfortunately, he used his cane to block the katana again. He got up from the floor and began to swing his cane at Jasmine. She managed to block his moves with the trusty sword in her hand. During this battle, Stinkmeaner swung her the cane at her stomach, causing Jasmine to drop the weapon and hold her stomach in pain. This gave him an opportunity to knock the little girl completely over to the floor. She was in pain and that could not get back up to the ground. Huey, Jasmine groaned. I failed you. I'm sorry.